Hey, in case you didn't know, tickets for Indieland are available right now, and they're going real fast.
One of the biggest surprises to come out on the Nintendo Switch has probably been Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle. Heroes from the Super Mario franchise teaming up with the Rabbids from the Rayman franchise in a tactical RPG is an incredible cacophony of ideas that on paper sounds ridiculous. The internet was also very vocal about how this was the stupidest and dumbest idea to ever be conceived. Many folks citing that it was going to be a complete disaster. However, despite its unconventional combination, Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle was an incredible success. It did gangbusters well, fusing tactics RPG playstyles with the Mushroom Kingdom, and the crazy not minion but basically minion characters was a gigantic risk that somehow paid off super well. To the point that this week, 5 years later, Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope has arrived. You guys ready for the clickbait question here? So did lightning strike twice with the sequel? Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope?
Hey everyone, and welcome back to an all-new episode of The Completionist, where we don't just beat the games, we complete them. Outside of Super Smash Bros. And Fortnite, good collaborations between gaming studios are few and far between, especially when it's two massive studios like Nintendo and Ubisoft. And it was even more impressive that Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle actually turned out to be an amazing game. It's definitely one of my favorite games on the Nintendo Switch, hands down. It would have been easy for the developers to really disagree on direction and leave the game in a stagnant and dissatisfying middle ground. But hey, thankfully that was not the case here. I adored the first game for all of its quirks, and in my video, wished that there would be a sequel. Now, much later in the Switch's life cycle, that small hope has sparked into a brand new adventure. See what I did there? Because the name of the game is Sparks of Hope. Hey, shout outs to Grant Kirkhope and Ubisoft for getting me a review code early so I could actually get a video on launch weekend for the first time in forever. Hashtag not sponsor. I did not get paid, but the game was free. Speaking of Grant, let's listen to that sweet, sweet rendition of the Completionist theme, shall we?
Yes! All glory goes to the winner!
The first game, Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle, blindsided many of us at E3 2017 as a tactical RPG with a colorful overworld full of puzzles, challenges, and collectibles. As a tactics game, the mechanics were very accessible, and mastering the game was incredibly fun. There were some satisfying and demanding challenges, as well as a bit of a difficult multiplayer campaign that unfortunately amounted to no rewards or acknowledgements. However, puzzles were simple and satisfying, and collecting everything, while a bit tedious at times, was perfectly manageable. Oh, and the plot, well, the plot was also there. Through a series of wacky happenstances, the Mushroom Kingdom merges with the Rabbids universe, and from there, the rest of the game is all about finding your friends, saving the kingdom, and trying to restore some sense of sanity to such a chaotic world. Now, looking back at it, none of that really paid off, and in the end, the narrative was mostly just there as a justification for the gameplay and for the Mario and the Rabbids to interact with each other. All that to say, while I absolutely adored the game and its subsequent DK-themed DLC, the act of completing the game wasn't nearly as rewarding as I had hoped it would be, so the game got a rating of finish it. 5 years later, Sparks of Hope has just come out with all of its tactical RPG goodness. We see the return of most of the original cast like Rabbid Peach and Mario, and we also got some newcomers like Bowser, Rabbid Rosalina, and an edgy sword-wielding rabbit appropriately named Edge. And just like the last game, we can expect some tough battles and lots of collectibles. This time around, they have provided us with multiple screens dedicated to sharing this game's completionist checklist, which, by the way, thank you! I love when games do this. It is satisfying to check off boxes when you have done every single thing. We've got the main missions, side quests, and a progression screen that tracks each world's completion score, the number of sparks are basically Rabbid Lumas if you will, weapon skins, planet keys which allow you to travel to a special bonus world with a puzzle, and memories which are essentially description logs of various characters, items, and locations you've collected. The developers at Ubisoft Milan are making it very apparent that they want you to complete this game. So, what's the end of that rainbow? We're gonna find out. In terms of a story, you don't have to worry too much about it. The only thing you really need to know about the original game is that Mario's gang and the Rabbids inhabit the same universe now and going forward. But that's just something you need to accept rather than understand. In the last game, we had an opening in which we saw two worlds fused together via a young, inspiring inventor who is also a big Mario and Nintendo fan. It created lots of intrigue, setting up what potentially could be a very fun Back to the Future-esque narrative. What's interesting about Sparks of Hope is that the narrative from the last game isn't that important at all. It's just been assumed that the Rabbids and the inhabitants of the Mushroom Kingdom have just been chilling together in society these last few years. No big cutscene setting the stage, no tying narrative from the previous game. Overall, a very fascinating choice. Sparks of Hope opens up with us shaking trees and bushes in the Mushroom Kingdom courtyard to find Rabbid Mario's overalls. And then a Rabbid Luma hybrid, known as a Spark, as I said before, comes flying down from the sky being chased by a space manta. Mario grabs his guns and jumps into the space manta, where you enter a few tutorials to get up to speed on the combat system. That is not a sentence I ever expected to say in my life, but I guess it's on par for this series. From there, we escape onto a ship and learn that Cursa, a mysterious evil entity, is collecting the sparks and plans to use their energy to take over the galaxy. And somewhere out there, Rosalina is missing. I'm pretty sure, just based on the marketing alone and what's here, I think I know where Rosalina is, Cursa. Our hero's plan is to travel from planet to planet, collecting purified crystals of darkness. You heard me, dark mess, not darkness. Say it together, darkness, and use them as fuel until they reach Cursa's hideout. Now, does any of it all really make sense? No. Is any of it a continuation of the previous game's narrative? Not really. Does any of that really bother me? Hell no. This game out the gate sets an amazing pace and tone that just gets you into the action. And that's fine because just like the first game, we have a reason to jump back in to the tactical RPG chaos of fun. Kingdom Battle was a game that was brimming with audio-visual personality. From remixed themes to unique Rabbid Mushroom Kingdom hybrids, the first entry in this series swung big, and fans of either series couldn't help but be delighted by this fusion of worlds. I'm happy to report that, for the most part, the same holds true for Sparks of Hope. Right off the bat, one of the first things to welcome us into this game is the soundtrack. Grant Kirkhope returns alongside Yoko Shimomura of Kingdom Hearts fame, and Gareth Coker from the Ori franchise, and so much more. These three are titans of the video game music industry, and their tunes are exploding with the whimsy and heroism from the first game. If you follow any of their work, you'll instantly know, oh, this is a Grant Kirkhope track. This one sounds straight up from Kingdom Hearts, almost immediately. And although the music is grand, the real big change here that messed me up for a bit was the voice acting. That's right, voice acting. I'm not talking about Mario and Peach going Yahoo and Wee. The voice acting threw me for a loop with its odd range. The Mario cast have their standard yippies and wahoos, but then the Rabbids have partial voice acting, where they voice a line that is a fragment of the paragraph or close enough to the written line. The Rabbids also have much more normal talking voices compared to the screams that the Rabbids are known for. And if all of that wasn't jarring enough, our two robot companions, Beepo and Genie, Genie being the new ship's AI, both talk in fully spoken voice lines. Distracting as I found these changes to be, the character interactions were still very enjoyable. The charm also returns in the visuals. Now, there's still some instances of screen tearing or stuttering, but in comparison to Kingdom Battle, it's a much more smoother visual experience. Each planet feels unique in its overall aesthetics and design, just like the planets in Mario Galaxy. The Dark Mist, which is the evil black goo that Cursa has been using to cause trouble through, make the worlds very gloomy. But as you progress and clear out the Dark Mist, all the worlds start to look brighter. It's always a satisfying process to slowly improve the world you're inhabiting in a game, and this addition was made possible by the new overworld design. So in Kingdom Battle, the main fights took place in the overworld itself, but now almost all the fight zones take place in separate battle zones we need to load into. It makes the overworld feel so much more alive. The camera constantly sits a little too close to our characters to really take in all the sights, but it looked wonderful regardless. However, the motif of clashing themes isn't as present in Sparks of Hope as it was in Kingdom Battle. There are still plenty of references and characters that lend a nod to the world of Mario, but this game definitely leans more into the Rabbids side of things to build out its own unique world, leaning a little more heavily into the Super Mario Galaxy setting throughout. Game journalist sentence coming in here, you really feel like you're on a different planet instead of a different part of the Mushroom Kingdom, or Rayman's environments, Rabbids environments. I need to play more Rayman games. According to the memory logs, enemy spark hunters like Bedrock and Midnight were created by fusing Rabbid DNA with things like granite rock and a cold mist during the dead of night that chills one to the bone, respectively. That last one I just said is taken straight from the in-game memory logs. Even though the game has a charm that's all its own, I can't help but think about how we have thwomps and boos that they could have just used instead. Goombas make an appearance as enemies, as well as Magic Koopas being controlled by Cursa, but unless you count wearing a pot on their head as wacky, the combinations just aren't as poignant as things like Rabbid Piranha Plant from the first game. I also will add that as the game goes on, it does start to do its homework again, connecting back to the first game, narratively speaking, which while I said earlier wasn't necessary, this was a nice touch. It felt like it was acknowledging some of the seeds planted from the first title. But looking at all what I just said, a lot of this just seems like petty and weird minor complaints. At the end of the day, this game set out to do its own thing, and overall, I think it did a fantastic job. Of course, the main draw of these games is the combat. These tactical RPGs put a huge focus on team building and movement, and that holds true for Sparks of Hope. But there are also small adjustments made that add a lot to each battle. In the first game, you were required to take Mario and at least one Rabbid into combat. That provided its own set of challenges, but now you can use any combination of heroes in most battles. There are a few challenges that lock your party, but most of them are for quests and side missions. But for 95% of the time, it's mostly up to you. Overall, these changes were made to give the players more options during combat. The first most notable change was removing the grid-based movement in favor of a free-range radial system. It's a little bit awkward at first, but after I quickly adjusted to it, there was much more room for creative freedom when carrying out a plan. Team jumping is back, which allows you to vault one character from a team member's position to extend your movement. In the first game, you had to plan out exactly what all of your movements were before you acted upon them. But with this much more fluid movement system, you have some time to think on the fly. Once you jump into the air, you grab onto a Beepo, who will hover you around for a period of time. In that time, you can align your landing and even use a few abilities too. Mario, for example, is able to hang in the air and stomp on Goombas sometimes, as well as even shoot enemies at a higher vantage point. And yeah, Mario with a gun truly never stops being hilarious to me. Brap, 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 brap. Weapon types have also mostly remained the same for returning characters, and this time around they feel a bit more distinct. So for instance, Mario and Rabbid Peach are both mid-ranged shooters, but now Mario has two shots he can individually aim, whereas Rabbid Peach can now fire missiles that go over some enemy cover. Their firepower is linked to an RPG progression system rather than weapons or skins. In Kingdom Battle, if you wanted to add a fire or honey effect to your weapon, then you needed to grab that respective gun. Now I can just appreciate the skins as decorations, thanks in part to one of the biggest changes in the game, which also offers the greatest amount of player expression and experimentation: the Sparks. Sparks, the Rabbid Luma hybrids, have completely replaced weapon effects and secondary weapons, and they drive the player forward not just in terms of the combat, but also in terms of the story. They're being hunted down for their power, and we're able to use their abilities to help us in combat. There's a wide array of what they can do, everything from boosting your team's damage, to adding an elemental effect to your weapon or dash, to summoning an extra AI companion to help out in battle. Now, any hero can use any spark, so there's lots of ways to mix and match their applications in a fight, and there's 30 sparks in the game total. However, because sparks have a cooldown, you now have to consider when you're using their abilities. Techniques also return from the first game and are also character-specific abilities. However, each character is more dedicated to their archetype, like a brawler, healer, or sniper. It helps the characters feel more distinct and balances out their strengths and weaknesses. So let's take Peach for example. Peach and Rabbid Peach were both healers in Kingdom Battle, but now Rabbid Peach is the main healer, and Peach focuses on providing barriers for the team. Now, that may sound like a nerf, but the sparks provide similar types of support. So even though having a dedicated healer like Rabbid Peach is nice, you can also opt for a healing spark instead. Now, just like the last game, you can also upgrade all of these skills in a skill tree. XP is rewarded after each battle, and as you level up, you get skill prisms, which you can then use to activate on the tree. Winning battles also gives every party member XP, so you don't have to leave a party member in the dust. Like techniques, skills have been somewhat nerfed to accommodate the power of the sparks, but it mostly just feels like it's leveling the playing field here. Rabbid Luigi's vampiric ability was incredibly broken in Kingdom Battle, and even though that ability has become a spark ability with a cooldown, and Rabbid Luigi's skills aren't as aggressive, he still brings distinct assets to the fight. Sparks are powered up through star bits you collected throughout the world and in battles. Powering them up will boost their effects and unlock an extra ability that they can use. The last element to combat is a new addition in items. You can find healing mushrooms or POW blocks in the overworld, or by purchasing them from SalesBot $9.99 plus tax. They have a lot of versatility, and unlike the first game, money is fairly easy to come by. There are 3 main battle objectives you will see throughout the game. The first 2 are the same as Kingdom Battle: destroy the enemies and reach the objective. The new main objective now is to survive for a set number of rounds. This replaces the escort missions from the first game. Pair this with a few sub-objectives like eliminating specific enemies, defending a specific structure, or using bombs to destroy enemy structures, and you have a lot of variety to add to an already diverse game. Every update they added to the combat in Sparks of Hope feels like they were encouraging the player to explore their options. 7 of the 9 playable characters are available after beating the first world, whereas in Kingdom Battle, you only had 4 and you barely unlocked Yoshi for the final few fights. Learning how to synergize your team is a massive part of tactical RPGs, so the sooner we're able to experiment with everyone, the better. And most importantly, in my opinion, the thing that Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope does with regards to combat super well, and the first game did this, and this game does it even better, is make the ebb and flow of combat just feel like it jumps off the page. By the end of the game, I had Mario on cleanup duty. I'd make him go into sniper movement mode, and people would just explode. I do want to point out that difficulty doesn't really matter in Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope. What difficulty does is it scales your intake of experience and star bits and coins, and it makes the enemies more difficult, but it's also a toggle. So I was able to hit that level 30 cap much quicker. But if I had to describe Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope's combat in one phrase, I would say it's poetry in motion. So the regular battles kept me on my toes, and carefully analyzing each encounter was really fun. A lot of the enemies have similar abilities to our heroes, so you can naturally understand how to deal with their abilities and avoid unnecessary damage. And because they are on maps that you have to load into rather than just an existing space and overworld, it allows for way more battles to be included in the game. It genuinely feels like I got into fights way more than in the first title. Maps can be reused with different spawn points, obstacles, and enemy placements, which is just a smart way to iterate on this type of game. However, this new system isn't without some of its faults. Because the fights don't take place in the overworld, that means we're gonna get a lot of loading screens to take us into battle. Now, that wasn't a deal breaker per se. The pacing wasn't as strong because we couldn't jump right into the fight as easily. I appreciate that they tried to make entering battles more engaging by allowing you to dash into them, or having an enemy initiate battle by dashing into you. In some games, like Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga and the Persona titles, how you start a fight matters. But in Sparks of Hope, I could not figure out for the life of me if striking first in the overworld or getting hit changed anything going into a fight. As for the bosses and mini bosses, their theming isn't as strong as Kingdom Battles, but they do feel as creative as ever. It would have been nice to see a character like the Phantom from Kingdom Battle that sings about blue shells and Mario Kart, but that shouldn't discredit the combat scenarios we were put into in this game. Some are your standard fights where you have to rush down an army and defeat an entire platoon, but you also have fun additional challenges like protecting a wind turbine, rescuing a dark mess infected Wiggler on a train fight, and fighting an entire mountain that is making the world too cold. And as you progress, the difficulty scales fairly well. The game keeps you at the minimum required level if you make a beeline from key mission to key mission, but fighting the wild encounters to level up and doing side missions and gain a few extra skills isn't a grind. I played almost the entire time on the hardest difficulty, which meant enemies had more health and hit harder. I didn't get the benefit of recovering health as I leveled up all the time, and even though I did play on hard mode, I really appreciated the scaling you can apply to the challenge. There are basic settings you can use, easy, normal, and hard, and in addition to that, you can pick and choose which settings you want. You can make the enemy strong, but also reap the reward of a full heal after leveling up. You can even be immune to damage if you want. It's a nice feature that could be used to create a safe learning space to practice the game without burning through resources. I'm gonna say not only is it an accessibility option, but there are a lot of young kids who love Mario that don't necessarily know how to play a game like this. It's relatively complicated if you're new to this game. And I find that it's great they put those considerations into the game because Sparks of Hope may very well be many players' first introduction to the tactics genre. Once I cleared the 4 main worlds, it was on to Curse's Lair. Now, the final fights were honestly a mixed bag. Without getting into spoilers, some of them felt a little easier than I expected them to be. That being said, handling the new obstacles and parameters was just as fun as the rest of the campaign. And this time around, the plot had a little more resolution to it all. Was there a resolution that made sense of the nonsensical world? No. The story was again serviceable to introduce us to the world in combat. And that being said, with the main story completed, the game is technically only half over. So if you only focus on the critical path to get to the credits, you only reach about half of the content when you open up the progression page. Each world has tons of side missions, memories, weapon skins, and secret mission areas that you can either do as you play or once you've beaten the world that you're on. And in each world, there is one challenge that you can only have access to if you have enough sparks that you've collected. And that challenge is wrapped around fighting a giant-sized version of an enemy you've encountered or maybe even yet to encounter. These boss fights at first seem real tough, but it kind of comes down to using what you've learned when it comes to fighting the smaller version of that enemy and what you know about your current skill sets. Oftentimes, fighting the big bosses was not that hard. What was difficult was the minions that were constantly summoned. The minions consistently put pressure on you, so most of these battles are really trials of your duel management skills. In the end, because I had the best team comp in my opinion, let's go Bowser, Mario, and Luigi time, with the right spark setup, you'll conquer these guys in no time. You're going to want to defeat these bosses, not only because it is part of completion, but it gives you access to what's called a golden prism. These items unlock a new skill tree for each character that is based around cooldown times and free moves every time you use a spark. And since you've got 2 sparks, you can really use this to your advantage. This skill tree is low-key a game-breaking way to destroy the game. I applied the skill that allows your characters to immediately either refresh the spark you just used at about 25% chance, or when you use a spark after you've attacked, you have a chance to attack another time. Highly recommend you do not sleep on the skill tree. It is amazing. When I say there's a lot of items to get and quests to complete, I really mean that. A lot of these side missions revolve around additional battles, but there are also riddles to solve, fetch quests, coin challenges, hunting challenges, and even fish catching events. That's right, they added a fishing minigame, my favorite thing in any video game. Each of these side quests earns you either a spark you can add to your team, a planet coin, or even a skill prism. Now the planet coins are special currencies that you can use to buy specific items in the shop, like weapon skins, memories, galaxy drinks, which are basically free levels to level up your sparks, and the planet key. Planet keys will allow you to access the world's secret zone, which are these little rotatable levels you can explore, solve some puzzles, and then collect a spark. It reminds me a little bit of Captain Toad. However, do not forget to go back in there once you've beaten the puzzle, because there's another secret side mission in which you have to do these areas on a time trial situation. Speaking of secret missions, one of the more frustrating things about Sparks of Hope is the wind down process for completion. The game is great at helping you keep track of your journey and the things you complete along the way. However, you'll notice that once you've knocked out every single main mission and side mission on each world, you'll still be missing a significant amount of completion percentage. And then the fear starts to kick in. Each and every world has hidden side missions that requires you to explore every inch of these maps. Whether it's a puzzle you never solved to get an item that's simply hidden behind a wall, a memory in a chest, maybe a fight you didn't know that existed. You will tear your hair out trying to find those last percents to your completion. The biggest issue I have with Sparks of Hope is that if you're going to have a sprawling map with tons of collectibles and missions, the map should reflect where you've been at the very least, and more importantly, you should have a mini-map. Otherwise, your flow of gameplay is ruined. You'll find yourself constantly opening the map just to make sure you're in the right area at any given moment, just to double check, hey, did I go here? Did I go there? So the big question, what do you get for 100% on each world? If you get 100%, you will get a special golden and white weapon skin for one of the characters, a true symbol of completion. I want to give a big shout out and thank you to fellow YouTuber Austin John Plays for helping me find the last few percents so I can get this video out to you guys on time. I've been playing this game nonstop for the last 2 weeks and it's been exhausting considering what's going on out in the media and all that stuff. So hey, Austin John Plays, thank you very much. Please subscribe to him. He makes a lot of great videos about tips and tricks for tons of Nintendo titles. All right, let's wrap this bad boy up, shall we? After beating the main story, while at the same time doing every single side quest, including the secret hidden quests, collecting the 30 sparks, doing the 5 secret zone planet key puzzles twice, getting all 45 weapon skins, acquiring all the 72 22 memories, and you've earned 100% on each and every world. What is our big completion reward? You get a message from the developers. A wonderful, humble message from David and the team, and it honestly made me tear up for 2 reasons. One, I'm very tired. I've been playing this nonstop. I was tired just trying to complete the game, so I'm very exhausted. But 2, this message comes off as very wholesome and humble. It's a great way to cap off the journey. Now, usually I would be upset at this because something as simple as this is kind of a bummer, but the serotonin hit you get from unlocking every single item in the game feels good, especially the skins. The journey is the destination and not at the same time. And although right now I am personally experiencing some of my worst and chaotic days of my life, I did spend 15.5 hours completing this bad boy, and I am at peace. This game really cheered me up in what otherwise has been a really awful time in my life, and if a game can do that, then that's going to be a very important game for me for a very, very long time. Thank you, David, Grant Kirkhope, and the awesome folks at Ubisoft Milan for making a game that made me feel good to complete games once again.
Mario + Rabbids Sparks of Hope somehow improved a lot of what was weird in the first game. Things that we took for granted just seemed like simple upgrades and features here that really warmed my heart. I loved every aspect of this game. Completionists beware, this is a great game to complete, but on the road to completion, you can get lost along the way. For the most part, things are laid out, but there are such things like the hidden quests and the different little blueprints and the memories scattered throughout the land that aren't marked on the maps. So they're gonna really make you dig and look around to make sure that you found each and every secret. And honestly, I kinda dig that. Completing every single world got you those skins for those unique weapons, and yes, that's really cool, and it makes the overall vibe of the game special. The journey of completing was a part of me the entire time, and I enjoyed every minute of it. So, with that in mind, guys, I give this game my completionist rating of complete it.